Hello, my name is Matt Bilotti, and today we're going to talk about how to build a product that acquires users. I am going to share my screen here, and we're going to jump on in. Okay, so quick intro on myself. I am a product lead at a company called Drift. Drift is a revenue acceleration platform. If you've been on a B2B software website, you have probably seen Drift in the bottom right corner with a chatbot or a personalized message. We build that system. So I've been at Drift for about 5.5 years now. Joined as the first PM and have touched many parts of the product over time. And so just a quick background on myself, in addition to what I was saying at Drift, especially early on at Drift, we used to launch products constantly. We had a launch every single month. These are just some examples of that for the first couple of years within Drift. Additionally, helped launch some products at HubSpot, a bunch of their sales products, and a few other startups along the way. So I've seen these cycles many times, and I've gotten a good sense of what makes a product that has really good acquisition versus one with medium acquisition, and so, or not so good acquisition. So today we'll cover examples of great role models. So I'll touch on a couple of the companies that I look towards, that Drift looks towards, for really good examples of what good products that acquire users look like. And then we'll talk through each of the strategies, the core strategies. So market alignment, channels that work, great acquisition flows, viral loops, and a remarkable product. So I'll touch on each of these, talk about how those role models tie into each of them, and how they do it well, and how you can apply these principles. And then we'll talk about some additional tips as well. So some of the role models, these are a bunch that I will touch on constantly throughout this presentation. I think role models are extremely important. We hold them in really high regard at Drift. Different Drift product teams have different role models depending on the things that they are working on. And role models are really critical because it allows you to see what good looks like and get your team to rally around that, model their solutions off of it, right? A really good model is someone that has paved the way for an exceptional experience or product or whatever it might be. And so we look at them to see, what are they doing? How can we take that? How can we make it better and build upon it to fit our product and our market? So let's jump into the first of the principles, market alignment. So this one is the complete overarching principle. When I talk about these 5 upcoming principles, usually a really good company gets 2 or 3 of them right, and doesn't necessarily get all of them right. This is not to say that you have to get every single one of them right. But this one in particular is you need it, or else none of the other things will work. So what do I mean by market alignment? 2 examples to just have in the back of your mind. We'll touch on them, and I'll show you some screenshot examples of it. Superhuman and Dropbox. So market alignment, it is so critical to know what is the customer that you're serving, because everything comes downwind from there. I've seen a lot of cases where we at Drift, or I've seen other products try to do this, where they try to serve everyone at once. And what happens is they wind up with really fragmented product experiences that don't quite acquire users as well as they could if they were really particular, right? It's very different to show up to something as a user and say, oh, this thing is for me, versus showing up to it and saying, I think this is for me. Maybe it's for me. It's also for all of them, but like maybe this part's for me, right? You create that sort of experience when there's not clear market alignment. But when you have clear market alignment, you look at the product and say, this is what I need. This is what my team needs. And so the other part is all the strategies depend a lot on this, right? If you are building a consumer app, you're gonna have very different strategies for acquisition than if you were building an enterprise product or company. All the product acquisition strategy has to align around this. I think a lot of people fall into a bit of a trap where they see, there's some role model companies out there that are doing one thing really well, or, let's replicate that because we think it could work for us, right? The amount of B2B products that have referral systems is through the roof. And I think most of them don't need it. And in most of them, they don't work. It's really hard to make a B2B referral system work. But some people, they see it in other B2B examples and then they build it, but like they're not really thinking, does this align with the behavior that we actually care about or happens in our market, right? Referral systems work really well in consumer, not so much in enterprise. And then that's just another example there, and we'll talk about viral loops in a little bit. So 2 examples here. The first one is Superhuman. So Superhuman kind of goes above and beyond with the market alignment thing. So when you apply or get referred to Superhuman, they make sure that you fit in their market before they give you access, or at least this is what they were doing a couple of years ago when I had joined. Maybe it was like a year and a half ago or so now. So they send you an email, say, hey, we're interested in having you on, but can you fill out this survey first? And they take you to this survey, which asks everything about your behavior, how you approach email, what tools you use, how, like, are you using email mostly for work or for business? And they make sure that the person that they're going to get into the product is specifically the market that they're going after, because they're building all the experiences around that. And so they're focusing on the acquisition of that group, and then they will expand to it over time. I think it's hard to start with the everyone thing. And I think this is like a cheat code to starting with a very particular, you control who gets access to it. An example of what multiple market alignments look like, usually you find this in more enterprise type companies that have gone public and have multiple different products. I think Dropbox does a good example of this. So they have notably 2 very core different parts or like versions of the product. They have Dropbox Business, which is my company is going to buy Dropbox, and they have Dropbox Solo. So I'm signing up for Dropbox to store some of my files. And these are what the web pages look like for either. So if you're coming in through a funnel that is all about like you signing up for Dropbox Business, they're trying to get you to sign up for the free part, to free product, to get you to experience it and then purchase, right? It's all built around, the acquisition is all built around the trial and the purchase flow. Versus if you're showing up as an individual user, it's all just about sign up, right? The way that they're framing acquisition is like low friction, get this person in the product. So enter your credentials and then immediately you get in and you can start uploading files. So really, really clear alignment on that one. Great acquisition flows. So just getting somebody to show up or click on a link isn't enough. And I think something that is really critical here when you think about acquisition flows is I think a lot of folks have a tendency to think of acquisition flows either as the website experience or the product experience, but not enough are focusing on it as like a full holistic experience. And what I mean by this is I'm sure you've probably had an example of a product that you landed on a website for. It looked amazing. It was really well designed. And then you go sign up and the sign up page is different colors, different styles. The value prop is different than the website you were coming from. And all of a sudden you as the user, you're in this mode of, is this right? Like I thought that I should be using this thing, but now I'm not so sure. And that's because you have these scenarios where the marketing team owns the marketing experience and the product teams own the product onboarding experience, but there's nobody looking at it from a start to finish. And I think when you can build a partnership between those teams and have a clear start to finish from the moment that they find out about your product or service or offering to the point that they actually use it the first time, the more you can make sure that there's a clear line drawn through the entire experience. So examples of this, I think Dropbox has one really good example of it, and I'll talk about an example that we have at Drift. So the product experience starts on your website. I think this is a super overlooked thing, generally because departments try to have clear lines of ownership, but it really hurts the customer experience and makes acquisition a little bit harder than it needs to be. Staying aligned with the marketing team, like let's say you're on the product team, staying aligned with them is critically important. And I think product or like a growth team should own specific funnels. So if you have a viral loop in your product, the product team should own that end to end, right? Versus, somebody coming from a paid ad, that's probably just going to be owned by the marketing team. So it's not only important to just think about the start to finish, but also the where are people coming from, because the context of where they're coming from and how they're getting there is something that you can leverage to make sure that you're going to have and create this great experience that makes somebody see it, sign up for it, and use it and continue to use it. And so a couple examples of this here are, the first one is Dropbox. So let's say I needed to share a file with somebody on my team. Let's say that that's you, for example. I go ahead into my Dropbox account and I put in an email of who to share it with. And you'll see they reinforce who is sharing it, what is being shared, presuming that I would have told that there was a pre-conversation that happened. And then it'll reinforce that. Here's who shared it. Here is the file that's being shared. And then you click on view file, and then you get brought into this flow. It's like a clear acquisition flow, which reinforces, again, who is sharing it, what is being shared, and then allows you to sign up to access it, right? This whole thing is so contextual. They're not sending you to the home page to sign up. They're not sending you somewhere else that, like, you know, they're making sure that there's a very clear thread the entire way through the subject line, to the content of the email, to the sign-up experience, to the thing that I see right after the sign-up experience, which is the file that I was showing up to see. And another example that I love, and I'm biased because I helped work on it, is an experience with Drift. So these back here in the back of this screen, this is an example of what our chat widget looks like on somebody's website. And you can see there's a "We're powered by Drift" link at the bottom. So when somebody clicks on that, they land on this page. This is a marketing page. And you'll notice that there's no header, there's no footer, there's no links to other stuff. And it's because we made this entirely contextual to where someone's coming from. If they're coming from this link, we're assuming, because we know that they will have just experienced the product and they're interested in you know, moving on and saying like, oh, maybe this is something that I want on my website. So we remove all the friction and we make it personal to the site that they came from. So this here will be the URL of the website that they're coming from. And we found that this page converted 3 times higher than if we sent them to a home page or any other sign up page. This was the thing that worked best for us. So viral loops, it doesn't work for all products. And if you can leverage it, you absolutely need to. And what I mean by this is there are some products that inherently have a viral aspect to it. Zoom, for example, you can't use Zoom with another person without the other person using Zoom, right? It is inherently viral, right? If I'm trying to get you into a meeting, you have to get the product to experience the meeting. Where there are other products where it's much more of a solo individual user type example, where, you know, maybe my email client is, I'm using it, and I could send email, I could send you email, but you don't need to be using the same product that I'm using. So you could still have some virality in that, like Superhuman puts a link at the bottom of the email. It says this email was sent via Superhuman. So there's some virality in that, but it's a different type of virality. And the mistake that I see a lot of companies make, and Drift is like kind of that sort of virality. It's not fully baked in, but it's sort of there. The mistake that I see a lot of companies or product teams make is they try to force a viral loop. And this is what I was talking about earlier, where companies say, oh, we need virality. Let's build a referral system, right? Referral system is where people link themselves in terms of virality. But the reality is, like, you're going to spend a lot of time and effort that's going to go nowhere if your product has no inherent virality, where your product has some organic interface with an external user. So Zoom does, Drift does, but something like an email client doesn't necessarily have to, but you can add on top of it, right? You can layer on top of it with a signature, but some products just don't have that at all. So see where it aligns with your product value. So Zoom, it clearly aligns because you need it to have another person on it. The inherent virality versus forced. Forced doesn't really get you much of anywhere. It just wastes a lot of time and money. Really think about it as leveraging the moments a non-user would ever see or interact with your product. Dropbox does this well from those examples I was talking about. And these are just the 2 quick examples here. So Zoom, so straightforward. Everybody understands that you have to send an invite in order to get somebody to sign up or to get into your Zoom meeting. And then separately, this is a Drift example. So the thing I was talking about, the powered by Drift. So this is a little bit of virality. It's not necessarily to say that for every 1 user, we get 2 more users, right? That's an insane amount of virality. That is so hard to get to. Only very few products can get there. But there's some viral layer to it with that. Okay, 2 left to go. So channels that work. Certain products align perfectly with acquisition gold mines. There is a great article by Brian Balfour, which talks all about channel market fit and channel product fit and product market fit. And it talks a lot about how different products align really well to specific channels. And so it's important to think about what are the channels that will work for you. Like what are the channels that are working for competitors in your space, and channels that work for a great company you admire don't necessarily mean that there'll be channels that work for you. Paid ads are generally going to work way better in a consumer aspect than they would in an enterprise aspect. And so I'll talk about 2 quick examples, and then Google Analytics and Evernote have really interesting versions of this. So there's distribution channels, so App Store, web like Chrome Web Store or others. There's communication systems, so through email or messaging, right? Drift is a messaging platform, Superhuman's an email platform. There's some like communication that happens there that can be a channel. Developer tools, so you can build on top of things like Zapier and APIs and stuff like that. This is something that we did really early on at Drift. We just integrated with anything under the sun. Of course, I don't know if I have it in this bullet list here, but there's so many others like paid ads and SEO and all sorts of stuff, right? Find the channel that works for you. From a product perspective, you can think of them as another example is like other platforms and ecosystems. So build on top of Salesforce, build on top of Slack. So two really interesting examples here. The first one is Google Analytics. So if you sign up for a website builder like Squarespace or Wix or WordPress, somewhere in the settings, there's going to be this Google Analytics thing where all you need to do is put in your code and all of a sudden you can start getting analytics. And it's pretty amazing because there is such a clear channel here that if I'm signing up for Wix, I'm building a website for the first time, and I think I need analytics, but I don't know how to get it. When I'm going through settings, I will see it, and then I will go ahead and click on Learn More about Google Analytics, and I will sign up through a contextual flow, and then I will start using the product, right? This is the channel that they built out because it works really well for them. The way that they're going to grow is by getting on more websites, and so where can they find more websites? Well, website builders, right? So I just think that that's such a great way to do it. And some of those are through partnerships. Some of that is through a tipping point where any website builder had to say one day, well, of course we need to put this Google Analytics thing in here. Another example that I like a lot is Evernote. So Evernote is famously one of the very first apps that launched in the Apple App Store. And because of that, they were able to grow at a really fast pace because they were a first mover in that channel. So you could think about channels as existing channels, and you could also think about channels as new channels. And if there is a new channel in your market or industry or whatever it might be, where there is some future opportunity or something that could work really well, that is a really good opportunity to leverage that. And then the last thing here, I don't need to spend too much time on it, but it is having a remarkable product. Like, nothing beats something that is just that good. If you have an amazing product experience, it's something that people are going to tell others, something that they're going to share. 2 great examples of this is Notion and Superhuman. I've heard more people tell me that they love Notion when I haven't asked than any other product ever. And Superhuman, like, it's just such an amazing experience that it winds up in presentations like this because it just does things so well. And it's really important to think about what type of product or market are you in, right? Superhuman needed to lean on this because there's so many other free versions of email. And so they needed to lean on the remarkable product experience where every workflow is thought through. And there's tons of note-taking tools, but Notion said, let's make this thing absolutely remarkable. And it's something that stands out for them and has built this system where people get acquired through word of mouth and other facets. So people notice when something's world-class. You can do it by making something very, very, very good, or solving something in a really unique way, in a way that some of your competitors haven't done before. You could be the best at something, just the absolute best version of X, Y, or Z. There's a lot of like hardware tools that are like that. So Notion, I mean, it's just a quick example here. I don't know, everyone loves Notion. And Superhuman, I mean, I'm talking about it here. People love it that I talk to, and I'm paying for an email product when Gmail is free because this thing is just that much better. So a couple additional tips. Something that works today won't work forever. When you're thinking about your acquisition flows and channels and strategies, think about them in the context of like here and now and bets for long term, but don't expect that what you're doing here and now will work always. Make sure to measure those users downstream. So maybe you find some version of virality that starts driving a ton of users, but it's very possible that those users sign up, but they never use it because they're not actually the type of user that you want. And so that's a really important thing to make sure that you're measuring. Play to your strengths. So if your team is really built as a team of a bunch of perfectionists, maybe you have a really good shot at building the remarkable product version. But if you have a team of people that are more like creative and just want to like make progress and make something cool, then maybe the remarkable product isn't necessarily the path that you want to take. Double down on what's working, run experiments to try some new things, and don't try everything at once. Like, don't walk away from this and say, I got to do all these 5 things that Matt talked about. Pick 1 or 2, focus there. The best, get 1 or 2, maybe 3 of them right. And work on the funnel that makes sense in order for your business. Don't try to like start with monetization or, virality when, you really have to just start in some other aspect of your funnel. So quick recap, find your role models. These are ours that fit for me and the products I've built and ones that I look up to, but in different industries, you're going to find different role models. Find yours, get your team on board, help your team understand why they're a role model. It really helps anchor the conversation when you're building product. And then those strategies are market alignment, channels that work, great acquisition flows, viral loops, and a remarkable product. Thank you so much. My name is Matt Bilotti. Again, I'm product lead at Drift. That is my email address. And I run a podcast on growth. You can go to drift.ly/growth, where I interview tons of growth leaders, and we dive really deep into specific growth channels, strategies, tactics, and all that fun stuff. So thank you again for watching. Really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out if you have anything that I can help out with. Thanks.